Hello, Legends and Star Pals. This is Lindsey Turner and Sarah Knoll with your 2025 November month ahead forecast. Every time we do these, I'm like, I can't believe how fast the year is going.
Right.
November month ahead forecast. How are you, Sarah?
Doing okay. Yeah. Just as we were discussing before we started recording, feeling the Mercury and Sag feelings,
Yes.
adjusting our schedules, adjusting locations, adjusting microphones, adjusting technology, painters outside my office hallway, other people inside my home office. So
Yeah.
just,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, a lot of pivoting, a lot of adjusting. How about you?
La Yeah, it's kind of scattered, I think, is a good feeling. I'm sort of neither here nor there. And yeah, there's a lot going on. And I'm sort of like, not sure how I'm going to do all this, but I'm going to try.
Keep going.
We're going to keep on going. This month is really shaped heavily by this Grand Water Trine that's kind of been ongoing. Right toward the end of October, we had Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn in this Grand Water Trine. And the Jupiter Saturn trine just kind of keeps getting activated and reactivated by the Sun, by Venus, and then by Mercury. So the word that has been coming to mind for me is deluge. Um, Toward the end of October, we saw this Hurricane Melissa, which was a record-breaking storm in the Caribbean, really, really deadly, really destructive. And then I'm just noticing, kind of in general, emotional flooding. There's just a lot of flooding happening, both literally and metaphorically, and just feeling inundated. Sarah, have you witnessed this, experienced this as well?
Um, I mean, I can think of some weather-related water things since pretty coinciding with Saturn going back into Pisces, but I would say, um, yeah, it feels like we're revisiting a lot of Saturn and Pisces water things that we've experienced, but now with Jupiter and Cancer, like an explosive, sort of extra expansive, extra
Hmm.
meeting up with it.
Yeah, yeah, it's quite extra. And so is November's astrology, right? If October, I don't know that we could call October quiet. It sort of was, astrologically speaking. And, we were really focused on dignity, right? Having Mars in Scorpio, Venus in Libra, Jupiter in Cancer. We haven't had a chart like that in quite some time. So I don't know if we'd call it quiet, but November's loud. This is, I
Yeah.
think the word we used to describe our words were full volume, and deluge, and also this kind of sense of like going back because we do have
Yeah.
some retrograde stations this month, a lot of retrograde stations, both retrograde and direct. So we're going to talk about those. Before we get into that, I just want to make a few announcements about offerings that I have going on and that Sarah and I both have going on this November. First is my Healing Scorpio's Wounds three-part workshop. I've changed it so it's pay what you can. So I'm really excited. I want to start moving my business into this direction of having more pay what you can offerings because I think healing should be accessible to folks. We will be gently confronting wounds around invasions of personal space, feeling unsafe in our bodies, violations of bonds and commitments, experiencing ourselves or others experiencing us as being like intense. A lot of Scorpio influenced folks have that. And also confusion and fear around your personal power, around collective power. So these are all wounds that we're going to be working with. And kind of gently confronting during this three-part series, which starts on November 6th and meets again on the 13th and 20th. Those are Thursdays from 2 to 4 p.m. Mountain Time. Hope you'll join me for that. I'm also going to give a talk on November 8th, which is the day before Mercury stations retrograde. On Mercury retrograde, the talk is New Strategies for Unmet Needs. So, this is an adaptation of the talk I gave at the Astrologers Co op conference on how to intentionally use the Mercury retrograde cycle to identify and express unmet needs and develop new strategies for greater fulfillment, happiness, and connection. And I'll be looking at this upcoming retrograde cycle specifically to identify themes and challenges and opportunities. And so there will be an opportunity to kind of ask questions and workshop a little bit around what's going on in your own chart with this retrograde cycle. Should be about a 60 to 75-minute commitment. Also pay what you can Saturday, November 8th at noon Mountain Time. And then Sarah, is this our fifth year? Our fifth year of our Advent astrology devotional called There Will Be Signs. It will be available for pre-order on November 10th. So it's like one thing after another. But I'm really, really excited about this year. We have plans to simplify the devotional a bit, hopefully making it a bit more accessible for folks, not quite so technical and a little bit more like mythical and narrative. Anything else you want to add to that, Sarah?
No, we're
Okay.
excited to do a new iteration. It's something we change up every year, and we're excited about this one.
Yeah, I'm really excited. It's one of my favorite things to do every year is to write this with you. So, and then last but not least, my empowered astrology retreat had to be postponed because my poor co-host Elisa got sick. So it is now going to be January 9th through 11th. This is in Tucson, Arizona. Reach out to me if you want to join us. Tucson is a great place to be in January, let me say. It's nice. So yeah, if you're interested in joining for that, hit me up. It'll be a lot of fun. Okay, shall we jump into the forecast, Sarah?
Sure.
So we're going to go week by week. We've divided the month into 4 weeks, and the first week that we've selected is the 1st through the 8th of November. And I want to try this new thing where we use 3 words to describe the week. I've been doing this in my weekly emails, and I really like it. So we came up with loud, tense, and unfinished, as in like unfinished business. So, Sarah, do you want to kick us off with our first major aspect of this week?
Sure. So we get to start with something that at least sounds pretty positive, which is on November 2nd, Venus is going to square Jupiter in late degrees of Libra and Cancer. So these are our two benefics, and they're in cardinal signs and squaring one another. And so even though a square can sometimes sound harsh, that's Mars's aspect. We actually feel kind of excited about this one because the benefics are in good positions. Venus is in domicile, Jupiter's exalted. And so the square of planets who are in places they like to be and are delighted to be could feel like some kind of new beginning. It could feel like some kind of something beneficial that might come to a crossroads, that kind of intersection energy that we talk about with a square aspect. So we've talked about thinking about the cardinal axis, like Libra and Cancer in your own chart, and think about what governs those signs and where there might be a little bit of a positive crossroads. What do
Yeah.
you want to add to that?
This is happening in my first and my 10th, and I'm like, it's kind of a lot.
Mm-hmm.
It's funny when planets are empowered, there's kind of like a muchness to them,
Yes.
right? And yeah, so I've been experiencing this cardinal square as and this is happening like right on my ascendant. Of like, oh, like how do I manage all of this good stuff, right? Or like powerful stuff. And with Jupiter being in conversation with Mars and Saturn lately, there's been this addition of kind of challenge. So it's a mixed bag of muchness, I would say, for me. And what I also want to add is, just because they're benefic planets doesn't always mean good things. At the Astrologers Co-op conference, we had some really great talks on the like what was it on a we had one talk that was on tyrants, and a lot of them have really benefic signatures in their charts. And so it was really interesting to explore the kind of shadow sides of the signs that Venus rules, like Libra or Cancer, right? As sometimes indicating like law enforcement, right? Like fucked up ideas of what equity and equality should look like, attachment to nationalism or kind of homeland stuff. So I'm also kind of looking at all of these federal hirings for ICE and things like that. And I'm like, this is also kind of maybe not great. So yeah, so definitely both, both, and looking at the kind of integrated and shadow sides of Venus and Jupiter in contact with one another. And then on November 4th, which is election day, we get perhaps one of the most explosive, I would say the most explosive aspect of the month, which is Mars opposite Uranus. So Mars is going to leave Scorpio right at the end of Scorpio. It's going to make a quick trine to Neptune and Pisces, and then it's going to go into Sag and oppose Uranus at 0 degrees Gemini. And this is the first like harsh Mars Uranus contact we've had in mutable signs in a long time. Uranus hasn't been in a mutable sign in like, I don't know, 16 years or something like that. So this is maybe kind of has a different energy to it or different tone to it than the Mars Uranus contacts we've been experiencing more recently in the fixed signs, right? And so, yeah, I just think I mean, the word like upset is something that's used a lot in when we're talking about elections, like, you know, in the government sense or politics sense. So yeah, I'm nervous about it. I'm excited about it. There are a lot of really close races that we're looking at on the kind of state level in different places. There's some national races that are really important, some House seats. And then also, I think everyone has their eyes on the New York City, like mayoral election with Mamdani and like, you know, will he make it? Will he, won't he? So it's quite a day of astrology for election day. I don't know. Any additions to that, Sarah?
I think that Uranus in fixed signs is especially kind of scary, right? If you think about like fixed energy as like a stabilizing, trying to maintain things kind of energy, and Uranus is just the opposite of that. What
Mm.
I think is going to be interesting to see, maybe personally for people who have mutable rising, the way that this might impact how Uranus might be impacting people who have like a mutable rising chart, but also just like the mutable signs seem naturally maybe more well equipped to handle disruption that Uranus brings, but let's
Mm.
see if that's the case. I think that'll be interesting to see.
Yeah, yeah, I think so too. And this week, Mars makes contacts with Neptune, Uranus, and Pluto. So we're getting, again, because those outer planets are in all such close configuration to one another, when a planet hits one of them, they hit all of them. So it's Mars's turn. Last month we had Venus, right? And so, you know, it's pretty intense energy to have this malefic that is, you know, about severing and advancing and piercing and, you know, all these things, making these interactions with the outer planets. So I think the first week of November is that's the like most full volume week that we have for sure. Because then the very next day on November 5th, we get our full moon in Taurus, right? And so we have this exalted full moon. And this is a really wild chart, and we're going to get into it. But first, what I wanted to do is I think because I'm having this Mercury retrograde in my third house of writing, I'm like looking back to old stuff that I did. And a couple years ago, I did a collaboration with a fiber artist named Natalie Novacek, and she wanted to do like tarot cards that were quilted and that you could like pick up and touch. And she asked me to come up with the symbols and like what the kind of description would be, right, if you drew that card. And it was really fun because what I ended up doing was coming up with 48 different symbols that were all inspired by the sun moon combinations of the new moon, full moon, and first and last quarter moons. So it was 48 in total. And I just wanted to like bring the images in as we were talking about the moon phases this month, just because I think it's so nice to have something in mind before we like go into the chart and the more like theoretical. So the image that I chose for the full moon in Taurus is skull. And the description that I wrote is skull is here to remind you that all things eventually pass. Many spiritual traditions teach that when we make peace with death, we live a fuller, more joyful life. Skull asks you to make the most of your life, to become even more fearless. And this is often the full moon, right, when we're looking at like Halloween time or that Dia de Muertos time, that it's like the full moon in Taurus. That is the full moon. So thanks for indulging me on that,
Oh,
Sarah.
beautiful. I see your skull well placed there behind you as
Yeah. Oh,
well.
yes. My friend. My friend Saturn here. So here is the chart for that full moon in Taurus at 13 degrees. And Sarah, yeah, I'm curious what you're noticing about this chart in particular.
So, one of the things that we usually talk about in our forecasts and we usually notice is that whatever the transits are that are happening, like the big transits that are happening, are captured by the full moon. Like, if you think about the full
Mhm.
moon as like the brightest night sky that we're going to have, it's like the full moon is kind of a spotlight on everything else that's happening above and below. So, right away, what I notice, one of the things we first usually talk about is like who rules the full moon, which just means like what planet is in charge of the sign where the full moon is happening. And here it's Venus. So we've just talked about this Venus Jupiter square and like what might be at a crossroads in those parts of your life. And you pointed out that we're also capturing a square to Chiron, which forms this kind of thing that we sometimes call a T square. So
Hmm.
whatever's happening in terms of that crossroads, we can also connect to the Aries part of our chart and think about like what we've learned redemptively through those parts of our chart in Aries. And so that's something that the full moon sort of captures. It's ruled by Venus, which is interacting in this particular way with Jupiter and Chiron. So that's something. And then, of course, it also is capturing the Mars Uranus opposition that we just talked about. So it's also capturing this sort of new, mutable, pretty malefic standoff that's happening between Mars and Uranus.
Yeah, it's a lot. And when we're also looking at this chart, right, it captures this Saturn Jupiter trine. And what we found really interesting is we were looking for like, when does this trine go exact? It doesn't. So there's this really fancy word in astrology called refrenation, which, you know, an adult joke about it is that it's planetary edging. It's basically like two planets that are getting really close to either conjoining or making an aspect to one another, and they just don't quite get there. And there is this often kind of sense of like there's something incomplete that happens between those two planets, or there's something that like just doesn't quite, like you're close, but you don't quite get there. That does make me nervous about the election, right? Like election day, that some of the races that are really tight, you know, the folks that we're hoping will win, like maybe don't quite edge out their competitors. Yeah, or perhaps it would indicate maybe the opposite. I'm not sure. A full moon in Taurus, I think of Taurus as really being a earthy sign of the people. And so I feel optimistic about that. And yeah, but it really is sort of a like, ooh, this could kind of go either way chart that we're kind of moving into on election day, right? So yeah, that Jupiter Saturn trine goes exact at the very end of August, very first day of September in 2026. So there might be something right now that's gestating, that's like expressed in this chart as like not quite yet, that does come to pass next summer in that like Cancer Pisces area, but also maybe in the Aries Leo part of the chart, because that's where Saturn and Jupiter will be at that time. Um, there's a lot going on here. There's a lot going on here. Anything else about this full moon, Sarah?
No, it looks full. And I think, yeah, like you said, someone's going to win and someone's going to lose. And that's how elections are. That's not like a big surprise, but it'll be interesting to see
Yeah,
which
it'll
is
be really
which.
interesting to see. Yeah. And then right after that full moon on November 6th, Venus moves into Scorpio and makes an immediate square to Pluto. Now, this is also interesting. So, just like we haven't had a Mars Uranus opposition in these signs, we haven't had a Venus Pluto square in these signs yet. So, Venus is in exile in Scorpio, right? Like, this is a bit of a subterranean kind of darker, slower. You love Venus and Scorpio. I'm
I
seeing
love
you
Venus and Scorpio.
smile, and I'm thinking about your like New Orleans kind of imagery that you think of with Venus and Scorpio. But yeah, we've had this square between Libra and Capricorn in the last many years while Pluto was moving through Capricorn. So yeah, this is a first, and we might be thinking about topics of women, queers, femmes, that Venus often signifies, coming into some sort of conflict with the kind of deeper underpinnings of our collective consciousness with Pluto. AI. I mean, there might be something going on with like AI and art or something like that. Um, yeah, interesting square. Any thoughts on Venus in Scorpio, Sarah? I know. I mean, my partner has this placement natally, and I'm growing to like
Oh
really,
my
really
God.
appreciate it.
I love it so much. I
It's so
think
good.
for those of us with queer identities, I think there's something about Venus and Scorpio that I find really relatable for us as people who have been doing Venus things, connecting, loving, having sex, showing, assigning value, to things and in places where we were sort of told they didn't belong. And
Mhm.
so when Venus is in Scorpio, which is Mars sign, and it's underwater, it's doing all the scorpionic things. I think a lot of us can relate to feeling like our love had to be underground or subterranean in a certain kind of way or under the water. And for me, like this aspect to Pluto is also it reinforces the subterranean element. It reinforces like something coming from underneath. So I think these are great times to like unpack wounds and sad endings and darker places and darker times regarding all of the Venusian parts of our lives. I think it's just a great excavating kind of transit and
Yeah.
aspect for us.
Yeah. And on the mundane level, I have to wonder if this will have, because it's right after the election, right? And we're looking at some movement in the House that could have the consequences of the Epstein files like finally being released, right? And this square, like Venus and Scorpio could, also indicate these kind of like abuses that are kept down and kept kind of underneath of things. And so yeah, I'm sort of wondering like what will develop in terms of that, which has been um, a really important kind of ongoing unfinished story. Yeah. And then the day after that, I mean, this week is bananas. Uranus moves back into Taurus, and and you know, Uranus entered Taurus for the first time on May 15th, 2018. When I think back to that time in my life, it was so wild. I That was when I was being ousted from the church. My best friend from childhood had just died in a very violent way. And, and I'm just like, wow, it's been 8 years since then. No, yeah, 7 years since then, 7+ years since then. And so Uranus going back into Taurus, right, I think is really stitching up the last bits of whatever that story has been for you personally or for us collectively since the spring of 2018. Um, and it will stay in Taurus until April 25th, 2026. So we get just about, what, 4.5 more months of Uranus and Taurus. I'm thinking about this is my eighth house. We have left our collective orchard property and it is currently for sale, and there are all kinds of shenanigans around that. But, it's really interesting that I think the date for a possible closing of the sale is going to be after this ingress back into Taurus. I have a feeling that there's going to be a plot twist because of the Mercury retrograde. Anyhow, not to make it too personal, but just to give an illustration of how this is operating in my life. And Sarah, I'm wondering if there's anything that you're noticing about your own Uranus and Taurus story.
Yes. So really, and this has been part of what I think has brought us together as individuals. Taurus, my 10th house. So it's like the most visible place in my whole chart. And it has to do with our 10th house has to do with the way we show up in the world publicly. And so sometimes that's related to jobs that we do for money. And sometimes it has to do with our public reputation, like what we're known for in more
Mhm.
public spaces. And my life has completely changed regarding like my public offering and who I am and what I'm about. So yes, I think it's interesting to always come back to these final little like the planet going back into a sign where it's had a very long journey just for a short time, like we saw with Pluto, and we're also sort of watching with other outer planets. For me, the Uranus one, it really feels like an epilogue when something like this happens with the planet. And so for me,
Mm,
I look forward to the way that epilogue is like visually symbolically gives us a chance to go, oh, this is how I'm going to tell this story. Like part of our identity is wrapped up in the story we tell about ourselves. And I think the Uranus and Taurus epilogue is like a Uranus and Taurus, like what is that story going to be for that part of my chart? So
yeah.
think
Yeah. Oh,
about
I
what.
love that.
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh no, I just love that. I love epilogue. I think that's such a great word. Yeah, to describe it. Well, yeah, and with that and Neptune back into Pisces, like we're really, the outers are sort of doing that buttoning up, right?
Yes.
Pluto won't go back into Capricorn, but yeah, those two outers go back into their previous signs. Okay, so that's just the first week
First week done.
of November. It is that is the week that there's like the most going on. Toward the end of the month, it gets a little bit busy again, but that the first week really is like quite huge for November. So if it's feeling like, oh, between the full moon and everything and the election and everything, just know that it does slow down a little bit. And to that end, November 9th through 15th is the second week. And the three words that we selected are stationary, retrospective, and messy. Might be a bit messy. So, stationary, because Mercury kicks off the week with stationing retrograde at 6 degrees and 52 minutes of Sagittarius. And this Mercury retrograde, yes, it is ruled by an exalted Jupiter. And we love that. But Jupiter's also stationing retrograde, right? Just a couple days later, Jupiter goes retrograde, I think on the 11th or maybe 12th, maybe depending on your time zone. But
Mhm.
and so it's it's a little, I don't know, it's kind of like mommy's busy. I don't know, like there's just
Hmm.
something there's like a reversal of direction, and the helper is kind of like, has their hands full maybe because they're also kind of slowing down and changing direction. So stationary and messy, that's why those words came to mind for me. And Sarah, anything you want to add about this Mercury station?
I mean, the Mercury retrograde, it dominates November. It really is. It's kind of like we always say, like if you don't do anything else with astrology, look at the moon, follow the moon. The moon's going to be in charge. I For this month of November, I would say like eyes on Mercury because Mercury is stationing retrograde. It just dominates this month. And
Yeah.
so paying attention to what Mercury is doing, when it's stationing, when it's changing signs is a really important part. It's just going to feel a little loud. I
Yeah.
really love the image you're creating about Jupiter ruling Sagittarius and watching Mercury kind of do its dance around this sign, thinking about yeah, thinking about when someone is trying to slow down and turn around with their hands full of something, like that might not be the time you want that person to also be in charge of a project that's happening somewhere else. And so I really love that image. I think that's really apt to think about like,
Uh,
yeah, Jupiter is in Jupiter's vacation home and like very happy, but their arms are full of groceries and they're trying to turn around. So,
yeah.
yeah, that's a pretty cool image to think about that.
Yeah, and Mercury is like a little mischievous child, right? And
Uh-huh.
in Sagittarius is an exile. So this is a sign where Mercury it can be pretty fast and loose. What I know about people with Mercury in Sag is that they often, they'll say the thing, even if it isn't tactful or necessarily um, informed. But it's fun and it's like a funny placement and it can just be really big. And so, yeah, imagine like a Mercury in this sign where it is kind of like, whatever, I'm just gonna, like, I don't care about your feelings. I'm just gonna like say the thing, but also moving backward. Um,
Yeah.
Come to my talk. I'm excited to get into this Mercury retrograde cycle in more detail on the 8th. Um, so a couple of days later, we have our last quarter moon in Leo. And I was laughing when I was looking back at my quilted oracle cards, the symbols, because the symbol I chose for this was garbage.
I know. I was like, I'm so offended. I can't wait to hear your description of this. But I mean, it
Why
makes
are
sense
you
that
offended?
it makes sense that a last quarter moon is about garbage. I mean,
Yeah.
that really makes sense, but I think just my Leo pride sensibilities were like, last
What?
quarter moon in Leo is not garbage. But go ahead, babe.
Well,
Tell
all
us
right, here's
about
my
it.
description. See if this changes your mind. It's like garbage is here to remind you that some things are just trash. It doesn't necessarily mean bad. Trash TV, trash food, trashy romance. It can all be wonderful in their own right. But garbage asks you to discern what's really giving you trashy joy and what's actually ready for the rubbish bin. And just thinking about, yeah, like the kind of entertainment factor of
Yeah.
Leo and the refuse factor of Scorpio
Hmm.
and kind of like what are we yeah like yeah, what are we processing at this point in the month? And thinking of this sort of Leonine to significations of like royalty and celebrity and
Celebrity for sure. Yeah.
kingship and all that, and yeah, that like just thinking of like the No Kings
I was
movement,
just
and
thinking that, yeah. We're
yeah,
gonna
it's
trash the kings.
yeah, like this guy belongs on reality TV, not in the White House, that sort of thing.
Yeah, makes
But
sense.
yeah, yeah, it's a funny one. Sometimes you gotta be funny.
Yeah. Well, Leo's down, right? For that.
Down to clown.
Totally.
Um, so at the same time, that last quarter moon chart captures Jupiter stationing retrograde too. So at 25 degrees of Cancer. So yeah, I think this is like kind of an interesting moment, a retrospective moment, which was one of my words for the week of, you know, we're looking back, we're revisiting things because of the retrogrades and that last quarter moon. Sarah, you've always talked about how that can be an indication for time to grieve, time to
Hmm.
process, time to kind of think about what's happened, put things to bed, and yeah, and kind of jot down the lessons that you've learned. So yeah, more maybe kind of like somber week, I think. Um,
Yeah.
yeah. And then at that same time, Sarah, do you want to talk about the Mars Mercury conjunction?
Yeah, so approaching the middle of the month, towards the end of the second week, Mars, which is just like hitting all the things throughout the
Sure
month of
is.
November, we'll do a second one, which is a Mercury-Mars conjunction. So we think about the things that Mars signifies, like ambition and heat and cutting and poking, like some of the list you made earlier, and
Mm-hmm.
Mercury in terms of like communication and commerce, commuting, all the things that Mercury is up to. And Mercury is in this retrograde cycle in a place, in a sign that it doesn't necessarily feel like it has all of its resources. What will it look like for those two things to conjoin here in this Sagittarius mutable place?
Mm-hmm.
Again, connected to so many other planets and what they're doing. So,
Mm-hmm.
um,
Messy. This is why I
yeah,
put the word messy. This
I
seems a
mean,
little like, uh-oh.
for those of us who are like professional communicators in one way or another, I think Mercury Mars aspects, including and maybe especially conjunctions under these kind of circumstances, are times to sort of pause and think about what you want to say, what you want to write before you say it and write it. I notice with Mercury and Sag, literally my tongue sometimes won't work. Like, literally it will stop kind of being able to form the words, which as a natal Mercury and Virgo, I find completely distressing. So
Mm-hmm.
thinking about Mars just kind of getting in there and messing with something that's already getting messed with and irritated. I see a lot of different kinds of irritation regarding our communications here. Again, we're
Yeah.
in the wake of the election. So that'll be interesting to see. There's definitely a lot of talk about, suspicion and trust and mistrust that we can have around our elections. That's been going on in our country for a while now. I wouldn't be surprised if there are some disputes and some accusations about the accuracy of the results and
Oh,
certainly the
yeah.
transfer of power. So that feels like things that the Mercury Mars conjunction may be kind of overseeing.
Yeah, I mean, this isn't a very blunt fire sign. Sagittarius is like it's unwieldy. It's mutable fire. So, yeah, and keep in mind that the previous Mercury Mars conjunction was on October 20th. And that time period may most famously become known for the Louvre jewel heist that happened during that conjunction. But, I think that there will be some kind of connection between what was going on, and perhaps it was subterfuge, right? Like at the end of October, maybe something will come out, right? Around some sort of manipulation. I hope not, but right, like it seems entirely possible that some sort of like cover up or manipulation will maybe be exposed under this Mercury retrograde Mars conjunction in Sag. Um, and then, just for your own reference, the third conjunction is going to happen in Capricorn on January 18th in 2026. So I'm really looking at like a three-part story.
Hmm.
There might even be some news about the Louvre jewel heist, right, that comes out under this conjunction and then kind of gets resolved in January. Who knows? So that concludes our second week stationary retrospective messy. And we're moving into the third week of the month, November 16th through the 22nd. um, the three words we have to describe the week are wet, revelatory, and release. And so, Sarah, do you want to kick us off with this week with our 16th and 17th transits?
Sure. So, when we talk about the sun, the sun is late in one sign and getting ready to transfer into another whenever we're getting to be around the middle of the month. But before the sun moves into the next sign, it's gonna trine Jupiter and Saturn. So, This is pretty significant. Again, Jupiter and Saturn aspects are like really big picture aspects that we watch like at a historical level. And so for the sun to capture those, like it's kind of like when we talk about the luminaries, the sun and the moon sort of spotlighting things that are happening in the sky. The sun trine Jupiter and Saturn, something for us to pay attention to here.
Yeah, absolutely. And so we're getting this another activation of this water trine, which is why I'm using the word wet, which then becomes even more pronounced as Mercury retrogrades back into the sign of Scorpio on November 18th. So we're moving out of that fire element back into the water element. So there's a lot of watery stuff happening this week. On the 19th, the day after, we get this really interesting new moon at 28 degrees of Scorpio. And we're going to pull that chart here in just a minute, but I want to read my symbol for the new moon in Scorpio. So the image I chose is leaf, and like imagine like a crispy kind of autumn leaf. Leaf is here to signal release. Trees release their leaves at precisely the correct moment. Leaf is here to remind you to hold on tightly to what is yours, protect it with all your might, and also to discern when it's time to let go. Take cues from the autumn and trust that spring will come again. So here is the chart for this new moon. It is late November 19th if you're on the west coast of the US, and it's early in the morning if you're in the east coast. So, adjust accordingly. But yeah, this chart is bananas. Bananas, because the new moon, right? It's like a new moon that is also a Mercury cazimi,
Cazimi.
the inferior cazimi, opposite Uranus,
Yeah.
like just like a degree off from this opposition to Uranus. And then also really pretty tightly engaged in this Grand Water Trine, with Saturn and Neptune in Pisces, Jupiter in Cancer, and then we've got four planets in Scorpio. So this is why I'm like it's a wet time. Like it is, again, the deluge. I would expect more of that kind of whatever you were feeling in late October, right? Kind of coming back around. I mean, like, oh my God, it's so much. I'm really thinking about too, like with these water trines, we all have areas in our chart called trigons, which if you pull your chart in whole sign houses, there are three houses that are in like an equilateral triangle that all kind of relate thematically together. So for me, as an air rising sign, the water trigon is in my second, sixth, and 10th houses. And this all has to do with my income, my labor, and my profession or vocation. And when I tell you that is the place in my life where it's been so inundated with like muchness. And yeah, Sarah, I'm wondering if like as a fire rising, you're experiencing this deluge in the fourth, eighth, 12th trigon in your chart, which maybe has to do with things that are kind of like not super visible, that have more to do with your kind of psyche and bonds and family and roots and things like that.
Most definitely. So, sending my child to college, so his displacement and therefore my first time really living alone since giving birth to someone,
Wow.
um, means that, and also that I have two co-parents, means that my fourth house, so like what's happening in my home, is really, really different. And there's a lot of endings and new beginnings happening in my fourth house, which really feels reflected in this Scorpio sort of collection here, which
Hmm.
impacts my eighth house, which is about shared resources and the way I've been co-parenting with two other adults and so many
Wow.
shifts that are taking place there, and how all of that is both impacted by and impacts like my mental and spiritual well-being. And for me, the 12th house is always about hospitals and the primary work that I do. So like
Wow.
all of that feels like an ocean that is flowing together, and anything happening in one of those houses is inevitably going to tug the string of the other two.
Wow, wow. Yeah, and for those listening, if you have a water rising sign, think about the first, fifth, and ninth areas of the chart where, these are places that have to do with your identity, your creativity, your children, your philosophies and worldliness and kind of big picture stuff, your education, what might be going on in those areas. And then for Earth rising, thinking about the third, seventh, and 11th houses, which are highly relational, right?
Hmm.
These are places of your neighbors and your partners and your friends and all and your community, all how you are in contact. And it is funny. I mean, I'm noticing with my clients, like the Earth rising sign folks are doing really hefty relational work right now,
Yeah.
like, how to communicate with partners and things like that. And so, yeah, thank you for reflecting on your personal world. Yeah, it's very much. um,
Dynamic.
it's very dynamic, yeah. And then with Uranus kind of coming back into this Taurus place, revisiting is really engaged in this chart in a way that's pretty like, whoo, Nelly, right? It might be sort of like, well, what did your Uranus story kind of engender to need to be renewed in your Scorpio story and kind of what's happening in that area of your life? For me, that's eighth and second, and I know I'm really recovering from like a lot of loss that
Hmm.
I
Hmm.
put into the shared community that I lived in, and sort of having to be like, what do I do with my financial life now? And I'm making changes in my business where I'm like, I think I want to make my services pay what you can, and how do I like shift into that? So, um, I think that there is a lot of opportunity in this new moon to be like, what changed in the Taurus story that now needs me to kind of respond in some new ways in the Scorpio area?
Also
Yeah.
really brings me back to the compost image that we were talking about earlier with garbage and association with Scorpio. Like the idea of the epilogue of the Taurus story being related to like we're ready to compost some things. This is so late in Scorpio, right? Like we're really getting
Mhm.
ready to start like a big new chapter of stuff. But before we do, we're going to catch like every little thing on the edge of these thresholds of these signs. It's like all super lit up and connected to itself. It feels like a huge invitation for like, what am I going to keep and what am I going to let go? We're like sorting the recycling. We're turning over the compost here in late Scorpio for this new moon.
Yeah, yeah. And remember, the moon is fallen in Scorpio. And so it is this, like, I just think of like a rotting
Yeah.
or decaying or decomposing carcass or like an old pumpkin. Like your jack-o'-lantern has like completely started to fold in on itself and mold and
By
you
November
know,
20th, absolutely. Your
yeah.
pumpkin is in bad shape.
Mine kind of already are, and it's not even Halloween yet. But yes, yeah, it's a neat chart. It's a weird chart. The Mercury Cazimi, right, which really I think goes exact just some hours after this new moon. I think of as like some emergence or kind of crisis moment when an unmet need becomes very clear, and it's like, whoa, my car broke down, right? Like it's just kind of a like, shit, what do I do now? And so, if you come to my workshop, we'll plan on, going through these dates and kind of like what might the narrative moments be in this cycle. Um, the other thing that this chart captures that I wanted to mention is this applying Uranus Neptune sextile. And this is a really interesting, I think, kind of underrated, maybe
Mhm.
sextile that we don't get that often. The last time we had Uranus Neptune sextiles, we had a series of five of them, was in the mid late 60s.
Oh my
So
goodness.
66, 67, 68. What was going on then? what was going on in the US and in the world during
Mhm.
that period of time, right? And how do we connect this kind of like illusion and delusion and redemption and weird boundaries of Neptune with the kind of revolution and technology and sudden change and upheaval that we associate with Uranus. So this is the second of five sextiles that we are getting in 2025, 6, and 7. So I just think it's really cool. Most of us are not going to experience this again, I would
Right.
imagine, unless there's some like really big shift in human lifespan. But the next ones aren't till 2137. So I just think it's interesting. It's like these interesting moments in time around dreams and revolution and things like that. So the new moon captures that as well.
Thank you for paying attention to that, the arc
Well,
of
you're
those
welcome.
transits. Yeah,
You're
I really
welcome.
appreciate it.
You know, I love a sextile.
You
Venus's
do.
aspect. Uh,
We still have to come back to that idea,
I
don't
know we
we?
mention it every month ahead forecast. We're like, why don't people pay attention to Venus's aspect? Is that misogyny? Um, Toward the end of this third week, the sun moves into Sagittarius. It leaves Scorpio with a bang, opposing Uranus under this new moon, right? And Sagittarius. I think Sagittarius is a fun sign. Um, yeah, I enjoy it. It's like for me, it lights up my third house, so I find that it's a time where I'm often writing. I am, yeah, just engaging in these sort of neighborly ways, like hosting Friendsgiving and things like that. So I enjoy Sagittarius season. Sarah, anything that like comes to mind for you when you think about Sagittarius season?
Um, I'm, well, I love Advent, and so
Yeah.
I think about Sagittarius as a time where we are nurturing fire, but the fire is changing, and the way we light our Advent calendar or Advent candles. Don't light your Advent calendar. Light your Advent candles. See, this is like the Mercury Sag experience. It's like blah, 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 blah.
Yeah, actually do that. Light
I
your
mean, just
Advent
go ahead and
calendar.
do it. Just do it. See what happens. Yeah. For me it's my fifth house, and so I associate Sagittarius with play and creativity and fun for those reasons because it's like my house of good fortune. So I have those kinds of associations with Sagittarius, and so yeah.
Oh, I love it. I love it. Yeah. Well, let's move on to our final week here because Sarah, I know you need to go in just a few minutes. So these are for the dates of November 23rd through the 30th. And the three words that we have to describe this week are stationary again. It's another stationary week, blunt and emo. You're laughing. You're like, I didn't
I
choose
just
these.
Well, we've been talking about how the November holiday, the American November holiday, has just been plagued for the last,
Hmm.
like, I mean, and since you and I have been doing astrology, like, this is the time of year where we always say, like, ooh, be careful talking to your grandma this year. And
Uh-huh.
I just look at stationary, blunt, and emo as like three words that I might not, if I got to choose the words that I would want going into like a gathering of friends or family or
Yeah.
even having some time off. Like, is this what I would choose?
Yeah.
Maybe not. This sort of feels like a sullen teenager at some kind of corner of that table, sort of being like, fuck all of this.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
that's the energy we've got going into this week.
Yeah, I like that. I like that. Well, maybe another reason to divest from American
Amen.
Thanksgiving, right? And just do something else. Yeah, and also, just thinking about the snap cuts that are
Yeah.
coming up this month. I think we haven't even mentioned that, but um, yeah, that feels like a shitty thing to for our government to be doing while people are going into the holidays that are centered around feasts. And so, yeah, that also kind of tracks with this that it's just kind of like not a well-resourced feast time,
Hmm.
and that it is also, um, yeah, like that word, like subterfuge, like just like not like sneaky and not above the board. We still have a bunch of stuff going on in Scorpio. It just kind of ugh.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, on the 24th, we kick off the week with Venus conjoining Mercury retrograde at 22 degrees of Scorpio. Yeah, it's some kind of maybe interesting developments around, topics of women and children, again, art that may have to do with things that are kind of unseen or under the surface, maybe things emerging a bit, or things happening that we don't see that then later we do when these two planets meet up again at 14 degrees Aquarius on January 29th, 2026. On the 26th, Venus enters that Grand Water Trine with Jupiter and Saturn that just keeps getting activated this month. So again, just kind of a deluge. Although I wonder if this will have a bit of a different tonal quality than the Mars engagement with Jupiter and Saturn at the end of October. I wonder if Venus might come through into this trine and kind of soften or heal anything that was going on toward the end of October. I'm hopeful for that.
Mm-hmm.
On November 27th, which is the day of the American Thanksgiving feast, we have a first quarter moon at 6 degrees Pisces. And also Saturn stations direct for the last time in Pisces. So there's quite a bit of Pisces activation that day. Um, Interesting, right? So the image that I chose for the first quarter moon in Pisces is snow. And my description is there's something about a fresh blanket of snow that softens all the harsh corners and jagged edges in the world. Snow absorbs sound, reflects light, and changes entire landscapes in just a few hours. Snow is here to remind you to soften, to make space for transformation. Snow asks you to cloak your situation in peace and gentleness. So this might be a good reminder for this day in particular, if you are, surrounded by family and maybe there are some tense things happening. Sarah, any thoughts on Saturn direct and the first quarter moon in Pisces?
Yeah, again, the moon is really showing us what to pay attention to. So when a
Hmm.
planet is stationing, it gets louder. It's doing what its planet does in like a big broadcast kind of way. So here's the moon saying, watch, here's Saturn turning direct for the last time, right, in Pisces. So this is like the final pass of this kind of chapter of Saturn in this water sign. It's going to finish out these last 5 degrees. And
Yeah.
it just feels like it's another kind of epilogue. It's another kind of like, okay, here's the last chapter of this thing. Like, what's the story of that kind of 3 year period likely to be for you?
Yeah. Last chapter, and then with that first quarter moon, like what is emerging? What's new? What is
Hmm.
actually gaining traction here? Um, yeah, and that stationary degree, 25 Pisces, I just wanted to mention is the degree point of that Saturn and Venus retrograde conjunction on April 5th. And that was when Trump announced the tariffs on what he called like
Mm.
Liberation Day, or it was like a few days after that. So same time period that Katy Perry went to space and everyone got mad because everyone was like, we need health insurance. Like, why the, who fucking cares? Um, so to wrap up the end of that week, the end of the month, November 29th, Mercury, much to probably all of our relief, will station direct at 20 degrees of Scorpio.
Ooh.
Um, and then the next day, Venus moves into Sagittarius. But before she does that, she engages Uranus and Neptune by opposition in trine from the very last degree in Scorpio. And we know that the last degree of signs, the anaretic degree, is always malefic and kind of interesting. So it looks a little wild that last day of November, Venus moving out of Scorpio and into Sag. Yeah, I would say like keep an eye out for, what's going on with that as she engages that sextile that we were talking about that I think really marks a cultural moment. Um, and that's November, and we finished right on time, Sarah, for you to
It's a
go.
miracle. It's a total mercurial miracle in these circumstances.
Maybe that's, the rulership of Jupiter here
Maybe
is
it
saying
is.
like, well, you're trying a new thing and I'm going to help you out. All right, Sarah, thank you so much. I hope your month goes as smoothly as possible. And Star Pals, Legends, we will see you back here for the December month ahead forecast. And don't forget to join us for There Will Be Signs, our Advent astrological devotional.